Hi everyone, welcome back to another week of technology class. This is Mr. Thielen here. I can't wait to get started. Let's get to it. So I'm really excited about our lesson today because today you're going to get the chance to be your own junior detectives and solve a mystery about yourself. But before we do any of that, I want to get into today's objectives. So let's take a look. Now your main objective today is going to revolve around you being able to problem solve and make your own discoveries. But there's some other things tied in with that as well. So let's talk about first what exactly problem solving is. Now, maybe you already guessed that problem solving really means to solve problems, and you'd be right, but sometimes problem solving makes us think a little bit outside of the box, and that just means maybe doing things in a way that we haven't done before to discover something new. So today we're going to be looking into fingerprints, and we're going to be talking about the different types of fingerprints and how scientists have used fingerprinting to figure out all sorts of different really cool things about human beings, but also all sorts of cool inventions that people have created based on fingerprints. So let's take a look at some of those first. So maybe you've seen fingerprinting happen before, or you have an idea of how it works. So this student behind me here is fingerprinting himself, and he is going through each finger and pressing down. He's probably using some ink like I have here, and he's going to press down on the ink and then press down on that sheet of paper there to show each finger and what that fingerprint looks like. Now here's what is so cool that scientists have discovered over the years is that fingerprints are incredibly unique. And what that means is every single fingerprint on every single person is different from everyone else in the world. So that means if I press my thumb down and put a fingerprint, there is no one else in the world that has a fingerprint that is exactly the same as mine. It has only happened one time that I know of. So if you put your thumb fingerprint down and your sibling does the same exact thing, or your mom and your dad, you're going to find that those fingerprints are very different. Now, because fingerprints are so special, scientists and engineers have found a lot of great useful ways of using fingerprints to help us. Now, one way would be, I think about something that would have a password normally, like our phone. But now our phones, a lot of phones, use fingerprinting to actually let you in to the phone, or they use face recognition software. So that means it's scanning your face, but that's even more high tech. But the fingerprint one, I thought it was so cool. I no longer have to type in a password. I just put my thumb down and bam, the phone unlocks for me. Another way of using it could be right here. Someone is trying to unlock their safe using a fingerprint scanner that someone has created. Now, another way that fingerprints and fingerprinting can be used is sometimes if somebody does something wrong. Now, if somebody does something wrong and leaves a fingerprint behind, then detectives and forensic scientists and all of these great people can try to figure out where that fingerprint came from and also whose finger it belongs to. So that way they can find that person and make sure that they do what's right there. So today you're going to be your own junior detectives and try to figure out what types of fingerprints you have and what they look like. Now, just so you know, there are three main types of fingerprints. Now remember, everyone's fingerprint is just a little bit different. So none of your lines will be exactly the same as someone else's fingerprint. But all fingerprints, or I should say most fingerprints, follow one of three main types of fingerprints. Now the first one that's on my page here is the loop. And it says the loop is the most common type of fingerprint. The ridges form elongated loops. And what that means is you can see on the outside it comes around and it loops back to where it came from. So basically this entire fingerprint is looping around the center. It says some people have double loop fingerprints where the ridges make a curvy S shape. So if you put your finger down and it looks like this perfect S shape, then you would have a double loop. That's really rare. Let me go to my next one here. The next one is the whorl. And the whorl is the ridges form a circular pattern. That just means that in the center, you're going to see this circular shape all around your fingerprint. So that is the whorl. And lastly, we have the arch. It says arch fingerprints have ridges that form a hill. Some arches look like they have a pointed tent shape. Arches are the least common type of fingerprint. So if you have an arch, that means that your fingerprint is very uncommon. It's a little bit more rare. Now in just a moment, I'm going to show you 3 different options of what you can do with your fingerprints to try to figure out what type of fingerprints you have. But just so you know, there is a link in my little box that shows STEM for the week that pulls up this website, and it gives you all 3 fingerprints side by side and exactly what they are and what they look like. So if you forgot, instead of having to go back into the video and figure out which is which, you can go right to this site and it's going to bring up all 3 fingerprints for you. Now you have a few different ways of going about figuring out what kind of fingerprints you have, and I'm going to go through each one, and you get to pick, you and your family get to pick which way is going to work best for you based on the stuff that you have at your home. So I want to look at the first one. This one will involve balloons and ink. So if you don't have those 2 things, you can skip ahead to the next option. Now for our first option here, we're going to need our balloon and then some ink. So I have a little ink pad here too. Now, the balloon, you're going to want to make sure that it's a lighter color so that way you can actually see the fingerprint once it's on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow up the balloon a little bit. So Mom or Dad might have to help with this part. Oh. So I just blew it up a little bit. So you can see that the balloon is just blown up a tiny bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press down a few times with one of my fingers and make sure that my ink pad is good to go. I've got ink on my thumb now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press down on the balloon here. And I'm going to let the ink sit for just a little bit, maybe move my thumb around just a tad. Then when I let go, you can see my fingerprint is now there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow the balloon up even further. That's going to stretch out my fingerprint so that way I can see exactly what type of print it is. So here's my balloon blown up just a little bit larger, and I know it's hard to see on the camera, but I can see that my thumb, my right thumb fingerprint, is a loop pattern because it starts on the edge and it goes around and it loops back around all the way through the fingerprint. So my thumbprint is the loop pattern. Now for fun, I also did my second finger, so my pointer finger, and you can see that this fingerprint is different. This one looks to be a whorl fingerprint because it starts in the center and it's creating that circle all the way around the fingerprint. Now the 2 other activity pages that I have set up for students if you want to go to that option would be in our main Encore for, it says, week of October 12th. And what you would do is you would click right in the second link. It says link for 2 activity options. What it would then do, it would take you to a folder in Google Drive. Don't worry, you don't have to have a Google account for it. The first one is a student fingerprint card where you could go through, you could use either ink or a marker and just put that on your finger, and you can go through and figure out what type of fingerprints you have on your left hand and your right hand. The other option is a fingerprint tree, so you could use your fingerprints almost as the leaves of a tree. So if you had a green marker or something like that, you could totally do that, or you could make them different colors like a fall tree. Totally up to you. So those are the other 2 activity options other than the balloon if you don't have that as an option at home. Now this last part is totally optional. Once you finish your activity, depends on which way you went about doing it, totally up to you. Then you could go into Seesaw and post a photo or video of what it is that you did. You can share that with me. You can share what type of fingerprints you have, all that good stuff in your Seesaw portfolio. You can just press that green plus button and add it to your portfolio. I don't have an activity posted for you guys this week. Totally optional if you would like to go about doing that. I would still love to see your work, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Until next time, this is Mr. Thielen signing off. We'll see you guys very soon.